Hey, I'm Siobhan, and I love talking about all the things related to freedom and personal growth. And I'm on a journey to redefine freedom on my own terms as I become the woman I desire to be. Each week, I'll share in real time what I'm learning as I do my inner work while creating a safe space for my listeners to feel seen. If you desire to be free and live a life that feels good to you, then you're in the right place for beautiful conversations that's going to support you on your journey to freedom. Welcome to the Siobhan J. Middleton podcast. Now let's start the show. Hey, welcome back to another episode of my podcast. As always, I'm so happy you are choosing to tune in for another week. You can probably hear the delight in my voice because I am speaking from my new mic. I wanted to purchase a new microphone because, as I told you on the episode, Dreaming a New Dream, I released a lot of parts of my company that no longer fueled me and made me feel good. And I am putting all my efforts, all of my energy into my podcast and in my writing. And I'm like, okay, Siobhan, well, just like you were doing before, you have to invest in your company to make things better and better. So here we are. I'm figuring things out. I watched a YouTube video like, okay, how do I set it up with my computer to make sure that I'm getting the best sound? I'm sure there's going to be some trial and error and all of the things. So just follow along with me. But I'm really happy about it. And I'm really happy about the flow of my podcast. So I found how to record during the best time for me, coming up with episode ideas. And now I'm ready to start interviewing again. So I'm going to start doing that. Another thing that I'm looking for is brand partnerships and ad space because I want my podcast to begin to be monetized. So now as I'm doing this work and putting all of my energy into my podcast and my writing, I'm ready for the next level. I just want to share that with you. So let's get on to today's episode. But before we get into that, a quick reminder that the reviews are extremely helpful. And if you're listening to my podcast week after week, even if you've already left a review, you can leave another review, a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, sharing your thoughts on the episode. You can ask questions. If you have topic suggestions, that would be amazing. But please leave a 5-star review because the more that people review the podcast, the more visibility that the podcast gets, and it's a win-win for everyone. So thank you in advance for doing that. Okay, now to get on to today's episode where I want to talk about or explore the question, are you free or are you caged? And I really want you to think about that as you reflect on every area of your life. Are you living as free as you want, or do you feel stuck like you're in a cage? A few days ago, I met up with a young lady who we hadn't connected in several years, and we finally made time for each other, and we had brunch. And when I walked in and she saw me for the first time, she was like, "You are glowing." And when I tell you that is the best compliment ever to give me, to acknowledge my glow, to acknowledge my light, like it is the absolute best. And so as we are having a conversation, catching up, she's sharing the things about her life. I'm letting her know about, what I've been up to. And as I'm sitting here having this conversation, I could feel my own light. I was able to hear how much I've grown just in the conversation that I was having with her. And I was like, man, Siobhan, you are free. Like that was a thought that I had. And I want to give you a little context. So her and I met when we used to work at the Bank of America, 10 years ago. So I haven't worked in corporate in 10 years, which is wild to me, right? But that's when we initially met, and we just stayed connected throughout all these years. And I remember when I used to work at the bank, and outside there used to be this pond. And every day in the summer and the spring, I would walk around this pond, and I would be thinking and speaking out loud how I just wanted to be free. I just wanted freedom to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And I was even more specific, and I had journaled about this as well. Like, I want to be having lunch with a friend at like mid-afternoon, and no one had control over my time, over my day. Like I wanted to be able to do what I wanted to do. And so this was a full circle moment because, again, her and I used to work together. We were in different departments, but we used to work together. And the very thing that I manifested and I dreamed about 10 years ago, I was now living it in that moment. And it took me having brunch with her to remember that, Siobhan, you are free. Like you really are free. Like you're not just talking about it. You've been doing the work to get to the freedom of being able to have brunch at 11 in the morning, sitting outside with your friend, catching up, all the things, and feeling so good about your life and where you're at. And it took me back like, wow, this is what it looks like to do the work. This is what it feels like to do the work. And I could feel the freedom that I had just in that moment. And I'm so grateful that I was able to see it and feel it. And it helped me put things into perspective, because sometimes I could be so focused on money, like, and taking care of like all of the things. But for me, and not saying money isn't important because it definitely is, but my number one value is freedom. And that is what I have to experience and feel in my life for me to be content with my life. And in that moment, I was able to see, oh, this is the freedom that you longed for, and you're now living it. And even when I think about walking away from my marriage and I'm now divorced, that is a different level of freedom because now I have control over my life and I get to move about in the world as I please. And that feels so good. Now, if you listen to previous episodes, I felt caged in my life for a very long time. I felt stuck. And there would be some areas of my life where I felt free, but there were other areas of my life where I felt like I was suffocating, that I was dying a slow death. So I know what both feels like, and I do not ever want to be in that position again where I feel stuck in any aspect of my life. So it is important for me to get very clear about my values, my beliefs, what brings me joy, what makes me feel free, so that when I encounter people, places, or things that are stripping me from my freedom and making me feel caged, I know how to let it go and move on. I am truly living out my dream right now. The dream was to have my own apartment. The dream was to be free. And when I think about even the work with my podcast, this is so free for me because, number one, I'm not stretched too thin. I get to do the very thing that I love to do, which is to talk and to share and to express. And so as I'm thinking about my freedom, I am basking in all of this beautiful energy because I am finally living on my own terms. And even as I'm exploring, okay, what's next? It feels good to dream again. It feels good to love my life. I did this post on Instagram a few days ago. I was in my bed and I'm like, my bed feels so damn good because number one, it's comfortable. And also I recently purchased a duvet for the first time. And I've always purchased comforters in the past, but a duvet, if you know, you know. And I have been sleeping like a baby. Like my bed is so comfortable. My home is very warm and energizing. And everything that I am connected to, it feels good to me. And I'm just basking in this beautiful energy of flow, of freedom, of joy. And I will tell you, it has taken a lot to get here. I've had to fight for every aspect of my life to get to this place of freedom, but it has been all worth it. Like doing the work is worth it. You just have to stick to it. Another thought that I had recently is that my light is attractive. It is alluring. It's also contagious. And both men and women naturally want to be around me. I get it. I understand it now. But what I am learning on my journey of becoming free and becoming more of myself is that my light will be too bright for some people. Naturally, they'll want to be around me. They want to be connected to this beautiful, positive vibe that I have. But sometimes my light will be too bright because I'm going to reflect you back to yourself, and you may not like the reflection that you see. And so I am getting comfortable with this process that everybody cannot go with you. Everybody cannot be around you. There's a select few that can really handle your light. And I'm realizing that more and more. So there will be people that naturally phase out of my life because my light is too bright, or their light is too dim that I cannot be around it. Then there will be people in my life where my light is just what they need to show up for themselves. Because what's going to happen is you cannot be around me for a short period of time and not want to do something different with your life. You cannot be around me for a short period of time and not be inspired. You cannot be around me for any amount of time and not want to be free. I am crystal clear about that. And so I'm learning to accept that there will be people in my life that can handle my light, and there'll be people in my life that cannot handle it. And that is okay. And so I encourage you to think about your life. Are you free? Is your light shining bright? Or are you caged and stuck? And this is not a judgment. This is not to make you feel bad with the questions that I ask. It's really for you to take a look at your life and think about, am I truly living the life I want? And if you feel free, I want you to journal all the ways why you feel free. And if you feel caged and stuck, journal about all the ways that you feel stuck and caged. And then think through, how do I want my life to look? How do I want to feel? And what choices do I need to make to get more free than I've ever been? And that's a question that I'm asking myself often. I have to check in with myself to see, Siobhan, are you free? Is this relationship making you feel free? Is this connection making you feel free? Is the work that you're doing making you feel free? And I have to be honest with myself and release and let go of anything that strips me from my freedom. And that requires self-awareness, which is powerful, but also once you know something, you can't unknow it, as I mentioned in another episode, and you have to do, I have to do something with the information that I now know. I'm going to leave you with this story that it actually happened yesterday, and this is what I mean by my light. So I've shared on the podcast before that I Instacart, and I've been doing Instacart for a little over a year, and it has been great for me. I will drop the link in my show notes if you're interested in Instacarting, because I think it's a great way to earn extra money. But anywho, I was Instacarting at the grocery store up the street from me, Aldi's, and I go in this grocery store all the time. And so I'm in there, and so the manager asked me he was like, hey, how are you? And I'm like, I'm amazing. How are you? He's like, I'm doing good. He was like, can I talk to you for a moment? And I said, yeah, you can talk, sure. And so he was like, we were having a staff meeting yesterday, and it was with corporate, and you came up. And I'm like, okay. He was like, we were talking about curbside assistance and Instacart. And many of the employees here were saying how kind you are and how organized you are and how it's always great to see you in the store. And I was so taken aback. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, wow. I said, thank you so much for sharing that with me. Like, you totally just made my day. And I just went on doing my Instacart. And when I was leaving, I was so delighted by that message from some random person at the store that I do see him, for him to stop me and say, "We had a meeting about you in our staff meeting." And I was like, "Siobhan, that is your light, that no matter where you're at, your light is shining bright, that you can just be grocery shopping for a customer and people are paying attention." And that just warmed all the pieces of my heart, because I'm like, "Siobhan, you're free." And the reason that they are seeing this light that is not dim, that is now really bright, is because I am walking in my freedom. And I feel so good about my life. And I feel good about the work that I'm doing. And I'm very, very proud. And even when it comes to Instacarting, initially I had some hesitation about sharing it. But I'm like, "Siobhan, you don't want to work for anyone else." And not to say that I won't ever do that, but in this season of my life, my freedom is very important. And Instacart gives me the flexibility and the freedom to work and earn money while I rebuild my company. And that feels so good. So the fact that I can do it with so much delight. I mean, when I tell you, I get cash tips all the time. Some guy last week gave me a bottle of wine. He was like, "Here, you should try this." This other woman, I had dropped off her order and I noticed she was burning an incense. And I'm like, "Man, your home smells really good," as I was dropping off her groceries. And she was like, "Oh, I'm burning the incense Karma." And I'm like, "Oh, I've never had that one before. I love the scent Goddess or Dragon's Blood." And she's like, "Oh yeah, those are nice too." And she was like, "Here, I have 2 more left. You can take these." And she gave me her last 2 incense. I share that to say my light is bright, that people naturally want to be kind to me. They naturally want to be around me. They naturally want to extend another level of kindness to me. Being free in your life makes you feel lighter, and you have a different experience with people in the world the more free that you are. So that's my message for today. That's what I wanted to share. I will love, 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 again, for you to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or two about your key takeaways about the episode. You can review as many times as you want. It doesn't have to just be once. Also, if you are inspired by today's message or podcast episode, you can treat me to a cup of coffee, or 1 or 2 or 3. And I say coffee because I love, love, love coffee. I drink coffee every single morning. If you want to show your support because you're inspired by my work, or my work is helping you in any capacity just to make your day better, the link is in the show notes. And I thank every single person every week who's continuously treating me to coffee. I also want to encourage you to subscribe to my newsletter. You can be both a free subscriber where you get the newsletter every single week, and there's also a paid option where you can actually chat with yours truly. We're going to start having more conversations and things of that nature. And then you'll also have access to community resources that I am going to be delivering. So you can do that. The link is in the show notes. Lastly, share this episode with a friend. My podcast is not gender specific. It's for both men and women. Send it via text, share it on social media, and tag me. I would love to see it. Sending you so much love and light, and I hope you have the most amazing day ever.